Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me, excuse me, today for Dynamics 365 Sales and LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So let me introduce myself to you guys before we get started. My name is Deanne Taylor. I work for RSM as a pre-sales engineer. I'm a director there, and I'm also an MVP for Microsoft. Feel free to check out my blog at d365goddess.com. You can also follow me on Twitter with that same handle. And if you guys want to take a look at my YouTube videos or connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free to scan that big QR code that you see on the screen as well. Now, some of the things I'm going to be covering today is obviously we want to discuss why LinkedIn and Sales Navigator. Then we're going to talk a little bit about really digging into that configuration. We're going to have two different places where we're going to need to do that setup for those configurations, one from the LinkedIn Sales Navigator side, and then also on the Dynamics 365 side as well. Then we're going to talk a little bit about data validation and some other configuration items that we can set up. And then we're going to go into a demo. We're going to talk about data synchronization, SmartLinks, being able now to create a contact from LinkedIn and push that data into Dynamics 365. We're going to talk about the embedded Sales Navigator widget inside of Dynamics 365, some more demos, and lastly, I'll touch a little bit upon pricing as well. So obviously, a big problem that organizations have today is obviously getting a lot of information from different places, which makes it almost impossible to get good insights into all of that data, obviously. A good example that you see here is obviously, right, Dynamics 365 data, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and obviously Office 365 can be some of that data as well. Now, integrating both of those platforms together, right, LinkedIn Sales Navigator and Dynamics 365 really helps us to combine that data from both applications, and then we can turn them into actionable insights. Data from LinkedIn can be synchronized to Dynamics 365. Dynamics 365 data can synchronize back to LinkedIn, but we also have the ability, for example, to just render data from LinkedIn directly inside of Dynamics 365. And I'm going to show that to you guys as well. This is just, again, a screenshot that's kind of showing you that LinkedIn data inside of Dynamics 365, right? So we can do this on several record types that live in Dynamics 365, which again, I will be touching on a little bit later as well. But I think the main thing is that we're going to be able to have access to this data directly inside of a Dynamics 365 record, which allows you to take advantage of your existing relationship. So think about, you know, when you're asking your network to get introduced through a mutual connection, right? Maybe you know a person at a particular organization that can introduce you, and we all know that a warm introduction obviously has a way bigger chance of getting a response versus just you sending an email to a person that you've never met before. So that's really where the strength comes in. So now that we've established the why, now let's talk about the how. So most of you probably have heard of the integration between Dynamics 365 Sales and LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but maybe you don't exactly know all the details on how everything works. So keep in mind that I'm not going to cover all of the features in Sales Navigator in this session. I'm really going to focus on what's really relevant through this integration with Dynamics 365 and LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So with this integration, we'll be able to move data between applications, as we said earlier, which means that we're going to enable and configure the integrations in both directions. So from LinkedIn Sales Navigator to Dynamics, and then the other way around as well. So I'll talk about what data can be synchronized a little later in this presentation, but with data flowing into Dynamics 365, this really gives us a lot of options to, for example, perform actions on the data as well, right? So think about Power Automates to automate processes, right? Such as maybe setting up alerts when a LinkedIn activity is created in Dynamics 365. Think about being able to now report on those LinkedIn activities, right? So all of that, again, are some of the things that could help us through that integration. Now, before we can start turning this on, so to speak, right, there are a couple of prerequisites that we want to consider. So for example, Microsoft Dynamics 2016 or Dynamics 365 on-premise is not really supported for that sync. You can probably with on-premise use what we were talking about earlier, being able to show those the iframes inside of a Dynamics 365 record, but again, it's not really supported for any of that synchronization. So you'd need to have either a Microsoft relationship sales subscription for Dynamics 365, or you're going to have to sign your team up for either LinkedIn Sales Navigator team or enterprise separately, right? So, and then if you want to configure Sales Navigator on that end, you're going to make sure that you're going to have an administrator and a team member seat. And then as you can see, you need to make sure your browser needs to have JavaScript enabled. And obviously you want to disable your pop-up blocker for the Dynamics 365 domain as well. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Dynamics 365 configuration first. So by default, the LinkedIn solutions are not automatically installed in your Dynamics 365 instance. So administrator needs to install the solution package before anybody can really work with them, right? But it's not a manual process. You can start this by navigating to business management, and then you click on what you see here on the screen, that Sales Navigator button, to start that installation. That will launch the installation window, which you see right here. And then once that installation is done, then users can go back to that previous screen, and you can then click on LinkedIn Sales Navigator again, which is going to take you through a screen where you can enable that integration and also turn on photo refresh as well. And then you can also turn on the LinkedIn Sales Navigator controls on the forms. So there's going to be two tabs that are going to be hidden by default. So, or actually, I think nowadays it's one tab and it has 3 different area sections in there. So they're going to be hidden. And what you can do then is you're just going to be able to unhide them. They're going to be on the contact form, the opportunity form, and on the account form as well. And I'll show you that shortly as well. But that's really just a matter of unhiding those tabs, and then people will have access to that. So that's from the Dynamics 365 configuration side. Now let's take a look at the LinkedIn side. In this setup, we can actually enable write-back capabilities from Sales Navigator to Dynamics 365. And write-back, what that means is really it allows users to save information that was created in Sales Navigator back to Dynamics 365. And I'm going to go into details of what exactly that means a little bit later. But this is kind of what that looks like. So you're going to be able to click on that. Let me just go back here. You're going to click on that button that says here, connect to CRM, and I have a little bit video on that as well. Then it's going to ask you, obviously, what system do you like to connect to? And that's when you just put in your URL, and you'll see that in a second as well. And that's it. You just put in your password, username of whatever that admin account you want to use, that service account, and then that is a setup. So it's pretty easy to do that. Now, you got to allow about 24 hours for the system to sync, but that's really, once you have successfully made that connection, you're going to be able to set your Sales Navigator CRM settings for the organization as well. And again, I'll show you that in the demo as well. But some of those things are, for example, what you see on the screen. So, for example, data validation. And when data validation is turned on in Dynamics 365, there's actually going to be a new option set that's going to be added to Dynamics 365, and this is called MSDYN_org change status, and the display name is not a company flag. And this is going to be added, by the way, to the contact entity in Dynamics 365. So like I said, it's going to be an option set, and there's going to be 3 different values in there. One is called no feedback, not a company, and that's the big one, obviously, and then there's an ignore one. So the way that this works is that when the current company of a LinkedIn contact does not match the account that the contact is related to in your Dynamics 365, then the field will be set to not a company. And then obviously now you can kind of pick those contacts out of your Dynamics 365. Again, keep in mind this validation only happens for contacts related to accounts, and contacts related to opportunities that are owned by Sales Navigator users that have CRM Sync enabled, right? Because again, it's looking at the connections of those particular people. So we're not going to be able to write synchronized things back for people that own those records if we don't have CRM Sync enabled. So this validation between LinkedIn and Dynamics 365 occurs every 24 hours. So besides the option set field being added to the contact entity, it's also going to be visible on the org chart on the account form. There's 4 additional new views that will be added in total to Dynamics 365. So there's going to be 2 opportunity views. One is called All Opportunities at Risk Contact Left, and then there's My Opportunities at Risk Contact Left. And obviously both of those are just showing the opportunities that are related to a contact that has that option set field, the not at company field, right? That has that set for that particular value. Then there's going to be 2 additional contact views, All Contacts Not at Company, and then My Contacts Not at Company. And then, of course, on top of that, you would be able to, for example, create a flow that might even send a notification or puts one of those cards for the sales assistant in there, right? There's all different ways to kind of send out notifications based on that not a company field. Then we also have photo refresh, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Photo refresh is really updating the contact records in Dynamics 365 with the most recent profile picture from LinkedIn. This is also a daily sync, and obviously those are for profiles that are matched in the system. And what that means is in Dynamics 365, you might have a contact record or an account record, right? And you match them with an existing LinkedIn profile. So when they're matched, that's when we can start updating those profile pictures. Now, the matching that I just talked about, that's actually a part also of data validation, right? So you probably want to know, like, okay, well, how is it matched? Because I had a question from a customer the other day, and she was like, so if I hook up Sales Navigator with my Dynamics 365 instance, do I have to go through all of my contacts and then match them up with the appropriate profile in LinkedIn? No, you don't have to do that. Again, that's part of that data validation auto matching. So the way that it works is you can kind of see that on the screen. For leads and contacts, it's going to compare the following fields in LinkedIn Sales Navigator and in your Dynamics 365 instance. So first name and last name, the title, the company, country, and then the phone number and the email addresses. And you can kind of see on the slides that this is currently unmatched. If I want to match this contact record with this record or profile, I should say, in Sales Navigator, I can just go ahead and click match, and that's how I match both of them up. And then we're going to also see, well, what I talked about earlier, that profile picture from LinkedIn now being updated on that contact record. Then obviously we also have the matching for account records, and these are the fields that we're looking at when we're matching those. So company name, the entire address, street, city, state, postal code, country, website information, phone, industry, number of employees. So you can kind of see that this is very important, right? I think phone and website are very important as well, because those are very unique type of data, right? That we can very quickly kind of link up to the data in LinkedIn. Here's some other configuration options that we're going to have. We're going to be able to, again, you need to have the right licensing in place, of course. Contact creation from Sales Navigator to Dynamics 365. So if you are looking at a LinkedIn profile and you want to push that data back to Dynamics 365 as a contact record, yes, we can do that now. That was actually the update in the last quarter, one of the updates, I should say, in the last quarter, which I'm pretty excited about. Then obviously we're going to be able to set up whether or not we want to synchronize in-mail messages and messages, regular messages sent out from the user to prospects or leads if we want to track those. Whether or not we want to use team links, and team link allows users to let them view and search their team's connections, right? So anybody who is on their team, now I can go in and I can look at their connections and I can view their connections. And then lastly, we also have SmartLinks, which allows user to share files and documents and then kind of track that engagement when somebody accesses that smart link or that file. And I'm going to get into details on how that really works a little bit later in the presentation. So the first thing I wanted to show you guys was really just showing you how to set up or enable that LinkedIn Sales Navigator instance into my Dynamics 365. So I didn't want to have to do that in my instance because it was already all set up and then it messes stuff up. So found this nice recording. So I'm just going to go ahead and play that. You can see that connect to CRM button. It's really, really easy to do that. So the only thing you have to do is just click that. Then you're going to pick the correct CRM system. In our case, obviously Dynamics 365. You're going to enter your domain and it will put it right here in the middle. As you can see, that's all I have to do. Nothing else, not the complete URL, just the domain. I'm going to click on that button over there, put in my login information, email address, password. I'm going to click on sign in. And that is it. That is all that you have to do. So you can imagine how easy it is for us to very quickly connect Sales Navigator to Dynamics 365. Now let's talk about some of the other items that we can set up. So we just saw where that LinkedIn integration was taking place in Sales Navigator. So now I wanted to show you exactly where we can turn on that LinkedIn Sales Navigator from Dynamics 365. So you just have to go here to settings and then business management. And then here you can see LinkedIn Sales Navigator. You can just go ahead and click on that. And of course, for me, it's already enabled, but you will set this slider to enable Sales Navigator integration. And that's kind of what's going to kick off what I suggested earlier, right? Those solutions is going to be installed. And then once that's done, we can set up some of this other stuff that you see, right? My photo refresh, right? My recent profile pictures from LinkedIn, which is going to be refreshed every 24 hours. So if somebody updates their profile picture, that's going to download and update my contact in Dynamics 365. And then this is what we talked about earlier, right? If a contact actually changes their organization and they're now related to a different organization in Dynamics 365, it will show that in Dynamics 365, again, by either going to look at those views that we mentioned earlier or going to the org chart. And I'm going to show you that a little bit later as well. So that's all we have to do here in Dynamics 365. Now let's go back to Sales Navigator. So how you access that is you just go here to your LinkedIn profile and you just click on Sales Navigator. And then here you have the admin section. And you can just scroll through here, right? You can see some stuff that you can do here. You can sync your licenses, invite users. But if you go here to this admin settings, this is where everything is. So this is what we just saw earlier, right? On that video that I just clicked here on Connect CRM. You put in your URL, your user credentials, and that's it. These are some of the other settings that we have. Do we want to auto sync all of our seat holders in CRM? I would set this to yes. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later, what is going to be pushed back and forth. But we need this to be set to yes for some other functionality for that to be enabled. Here's some other stuff as well. At which stage does your sales team consider an opportunity to enter your pipeline? I'm actually going to skip on this and get back to this, but this is some additional things that, again, we configure as well. What do we want to synchronize back to our CRM? Do we want to allow content creation? All of those different settings are here under admin settings. So keep that in mind as well. And then if you wanted to go ahead and if you go here to account settings, you have some additional information in regards to your licenses. Now, you saw earlier that I actually had it set to synchronize all of my users, but as you can see, not necessarily all of my users are matched in Dynamics 365, and therefore, even though I turned it on there, right, you don't necessarily have to actually use that. That particular setting, though, is needed for some setup. This is where you can, as you can see here, turn CRM sync off on a per user basis. Now, again, the only reason also that this is not working for these guys over here is because I actually have my LinkedIn, my Sales Navigator accounts hooked up as a demo account. So it's not matching those two email addresses. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the data that's actually going to be synchronized from one application to the other. As we just saw, the synchronization can be set up bi-directional. So now let's talk about what is actually being pushed over. So let's start what will be synced from Dynamics 365 to Sales Navigator, because there were a lot of people that I talked to and what they thought when LinkedIn actually came out and said, hey, you know, we're going to have some updates in this particular quarter, and one of them is going to be the ability to create context from LinkedIn. I had several people that told me, so does this mean that anybody that I'm connected to, that it's going to push that to Dynamics 365? No, that's not what that means, and you probably don't want that either. I mean, I have, I believe, more than 3,000 connections, and I definitely don't want all of those to be pushed in my Dynamics 365 instance. So let's take a look at that. So again, let's take a look here from Dynamics 365 or from LinkedIn Sales Navigator to Dynamics 365, what that write back is. So accounts and leads are saved for all open opportunities whose stages is greater than the stage chosen in the CRM sync preferences. And you're going to go like, what are you talking about? So I'm going to pull that up again, because I figured that that's what we would think. That is what this means. Where do you store the value for a one opportunity, right? So that means that, and we can use this, as you can see here, to estimate ROI performance. But what happens here is that we can synchronize that data over to Dynamics 365. Now, and again, that's only opportunities that have accounts or contacts related to them, because obviously we're not going to push opportunity data in Sales Navigator. It does not live there, right? We want to keep that living in Dynamics 365. So again, what this does is that stage that I just showed you, this really enables Sales Navigator to automatically deliver updates to users on those most important people and companies, right? Because again, those are the most important people and companies that are related to opportunities that these sales guys are working on. Users will also see a CRM button within Sales Navigator, and those can be for CRM quote unquote imported records. And it could also be with other matched records, right? So if I create a contact in Dynamics 365 by using that Sales Navigator integration, that would also have that CRM button visible. And when you click that button, that's actually going to open that matching record in Dynamics 365. So like I just said earlier, let's just recap real quick. It's going to show up for accounts that have been saved from CRM, accounts or leads or contacts, but also accounts and leads and contacts that are matched in Dynamics 365. And again, the synchronization runs as whatever integration user account you signed in with when you set up that connection. So keep that in mind as well. Now let's take a look at the other side, right? So users are going to have the ability to send emails, in-mails, I should say, and in-mails is really, because a lot of people ask me, what's the difference between an in-mail and a regular message? Well, an in-mail is more of like an introduction email. You're sending a message to somebody that you're not connected to on LinkedIn. And a message you can send, because those are, again, messages that are being sent to contacts in LinkedIn. So you have a connection with them. So through the integration, you can perform those actions like sending that email or that message from LinkedIn Sales Navigator or directly from within Dynamics 365. And there's going to be a little checkbox on that message window that says copy to CRM. And obviously when you check that, that will determine that activity needing to be created in Dynamics 365. So keep in mind, though, that currently when a LinkedIn contact responds to that in-mail message or that regular message, that's not going to be tracked currently. So you're not going to see any activity records in Dynamics 365 for that. But this is on the roadmap, is what I was told by them. So keep that in mind. Now, you're also going to be able to create notes in Sales Navigator, and then you're going to have the same copy to CRM slider, which again allows the system to synchronize that data back over to Dynamics 365. Now, keep in mind that notes that are created or that are updated or created in Dynamics 365 are not going to synchronize back to Sales Navigator. So that's just that one-time synchronization from Sales Navigator to Dynamics 365. And then we have the ability to make phone calls directly from the Sales Navigator mobile app. And this is very similar to Dynamics 365. When the call actually ends, you're going to get a pop-up window. And that's also going to ask if you want to save that phone call record in Sales Navigator. And then you're going to see that same little slider that allows you to save that, right, that activity back to Dynamics 365. Now, you got to keep in mind that the activity is only going to be tracked against the correct Dynamics 365 record if Sales Navigator was actually able to find or match that person that was called in Dynamics 365. And then what you see on here as well is SmartLinks as well. SmartLinks, I'm actually going to talk about that in the next slide. So let me just go ahead and just go there. So SmartLinks, I'm not sure if anybody heard of that yet. You probably have. This actually replaced the point drive functionality in Sales Navigator, and this was back in May, so it hasn't been that long yet. But what this does is it allows users to share content. So think about files and documents, maybe quotes and other sales, stuff, right, that they can basically put in like this container, and then they can give people a link to that container, and then they can access that. And then when somebody is actually accessing those folders and those files, I should say, in there, then you're going to be able to receive an email notification. But there's also going to be an activity record in Dynamics 365 that is created, obviously, if there is a matched contact for that person who viewed it, obviously. And that activity is going to show up as point drive presentation viewed. That's what you will see in Dynamics 365. Now, this is kind of cool too, because if you're sharing, people who are sharing the SmartLinks, you can actually do that outside of Sales Navigator as well, because the only thing you're going to have to share with these folks is just the link, right? So if you're on chat with them, if you're going to be able to reach out to your customers through Microsoft Teams or whatever other application, or if you want to send them the link through email, or maybe you want to send them a regular text message, you can do all of that, right? And then again, still we're going to be able to get that notification that basically shows us like, hey, so-and-so is currently viewing your SmartLink presentation. And it's kind of nice that you're going to be, it's very easy to create that SmartLink from, if you're in Sales Navigator and you're inside of a message, either an email or a regular message, there is that link icon on there And I'm going to show you that here in my next screenshot. You can see that over here. So from there, I can directly create that link. I can upload my files there, and I can just go ahead and share that with my prospects, which is very, very nice. Now, keep in mind that SmartLinks are available for both the team and the enterprise licenses for Sales Navigator, but you do need an enterprise license if you want that CRM right back. So keep that in mind. So LinkedIn Sales Navigator, as I said earlier, now actually allows us to create a contact record in Dynamics 365 from a LinkedIn profile. I think this is huge, right? There's no more copying, no more pasting, which we had to do before, right? Where does this person work? Here's his email address, all that kind of stuff. So now you can just go ahead and enable this functionality, and then you can just very quickly start pushing that data from LinkedIn Sales Navigator back to Dynamics 365. Now, when you're enabling this, you actually have the ability as an admin to require an email address to be mandatory in order to create that contact in Dynamics 365, but obviously it's not optional. And then lastly, there's the ability to select the lead source value that should be associated to contacts created from Sales Navigator. So what this does is this is actually looking at the lead source code field, that's the system name. So any values that you have configured in that option set, those values will show there. So again, let me go back there real quick. Let me see where that was. I'm going to go a little bit down. So this is what that is. Select the lead source value that should be associated to contacts created from Sales Navigator. So this is that value. If I go here to my Dynamics instance, and I'm going to go here to contacts, let me go to fields, and let me see if I can find the schema name. This is lead source code, I believe. Oh, let me just see if I can find that. Lead source code, this guy, out of the box fields. So as you can see here, I only have Sales Navigator and other. And again, I only have Sales Navigator and other, and it can render that obviously because I have this connected to my Dynamics 365 instance. So that's what that is. And you might not be using that out of the box lead source field, but you could still use like flow or maybe a business rule to update your own custom field with that value, right? So think about that as well. And this is what that looks like when we're creating that contact from Sales Navigator. So you're just going to have to open that LinkedIn profile in Sales Navigator, and then you're going to click on that ellipse. As you can see here, you're just going to go ahead and click on that, and then you get that connect to or add contact to CRM option. And when you click this button, and you'll see that in a second when I'm going to demonstrate that, there's actually going to be a duplicate check in Dynamics 365 where it's looking to see in your database if you already have a similar or maybe the same Dynamics 365 contact in your system already. So if a duplicate is found, then you can just very simply match those two records up together. But if there's not a duplicate in Dynamics 365, then you can just go ahead and start creating that contact record by completing some of the fields in Sales Navigator. So once you click that at Contact to CRM, like I said earlier, it's going to run that duplicate check, and if it doesn't find anything, you're going to be able to start filling out the data in Dynamics 365. So you can see here up top the account name. That's just going to show you all of the accounts that you have in your Dynamics 365 database. Once you select that, then you can select an opportunity. It will filter out the opportunity related to the account that you picked. And then you can create a stakeholder. You could pick a stakeholder role, which means that now it's going to be added on the opportunity as a stakeholder as well. And then you can see here in the bottom, it says here, save lead in Sales Navigator. So you can do that at the same time, obviously, as well. And besides these write back capabilities that we're just talking about for the last couple of minutes, I wanted to highlight that we obviously also have the ability to view LinkedIn profiles directly from within the context of a Dynamics 365 record. This is more of like, think about like an iframe. That's kind of what that is. So we're going to have the ability to use some of the LinkedIn functionality directly from Dynamics 365, such as the ability to send a message, right, or an email directly to a contact without having to navigate back to Sales Navigator, or the ability to send an introduction request to, you know, some of your connections, right, where you can see that you guys are connected to the same person. So I just figured this kind of showed you, right, when I'm on a particular record, what is the data that I can see on that LinkedIn widget. So on the opportunities, obviously there could be a contact and an account related to that, or just only an account, or just a contact. But we were going to be able to configure it so we can see both of those profiles. For accounts, obviously, you're only going to get the company profile. Leads and contacts, we're going to be able to show both of them. Obviously, if that contact field, or if that contact record and or lead record has that company lookup obviously populated there as well. So enabling the integration, like I said earlier, is going to add a tab to the forms that we're going to have to unhide, and that's kind of what you see here, LinkedIn Sales Navigator. But like we just stated, we can also put like these widgets on the form directly so that I don't have to navigate back to those different tabs. So you can do that. It's very easy to do that. It's actually a control, and it's a field control, and you can add them to the lead entity, the contact, accounts, or on an opportunity form. And I wanted to make sure that I was showing you guys the right stuff. So I tried to edit it in the new editor, but it didn't let me do that. So currently you still have to edit that in the classic form editor. And what you do, for example, for what I did for the contact, is I just dragged the last name field on that form, and then I went to controls, and that's where you could kind of see here the field properties that I'm in. And then you're going to be able to add that control based on that field, right? Either the top one, which shows you the LinkedIn Sales Navigator account, which is the company profile, or just the member profile. You could show that obviously directly from there as well. Okay, so again, I kind of wanted to do a second demo here where I'm going to show you different things. I'm going to show you how to do that widget setup. I'm going to show you those LinkedIn tabs. I'm going to show you the functionality of it from within Dynamics 365. I'm going to show you some of that data, how that's going back and forth, and so you can also kind of see how quick that is. And I'm going to show you some messages sending from Sales Navigator, adding SmartLinks and all that kind of good stuff as well, creating notes and creating that contact record from LinkedIn to Dynamics 365. I'm going to show you the org chart and the Sales Navigator mobile app. So this is my favorite part, because slides are usually a little bit boring to me. So I'm going to dive right in. Let's just go back here to Dynamics 365, and let me first kind of show you what that widget looked like. You already saw that kind of on that screenshot, but I like live data. So let me just go ahead and give this a second here while this is loading. Here's that widget I was talking about. And that's what that looks like. So how do we configure that? Well, I'm going here to my solution file. Like I said, unfortunately, you have to use the quote unquote old interface. I'm going to go to my form. This is my regular contact form, as you can see. Can I make this a little bit bigger? Does not like that. Let's try that one more time. Oh, there we go. So here's my contact form. So all you have to do, this is actually my widget, but I'm just going to recreate that from scratch. I'm going to look for my last name fields. Where's my last? Oh, here it is. Lead source, last name. Here we go. Last name. I'm going to double click on that. We probably don't want to display the label, right? Because it's going to hold that widget. I'm going to go to controls. I'm going to add that control. And then if you scroll down, this is what I was talking about earlier. So depending on what we want to show, do we want to show this person's account information or his member profile? Let's say his member profile. I'm going to click add. You got to make sure you turn this on, obviously. And then you can set up some of these properties, as you can see here. So you can show the top card. I can say yes or no directly from within here. And whether or not you want to show icebreakers. So let's just go back here real quick. What are icebreakers? That this particular tab, do I want to show that or not? There's some other stuff here too. So that's where you really set up all of those different items here, the properties here. This is where you can do that. So I'm just going to get out of there. I already have that. So that's how you do that. Then I also wanted to show you this particular tab, the LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So when you open this, this is going to show checked, visible by default, and available on a phone. This means that people can't see it, right? So you got to make sure to go back in here and uncheck those, and then you can just go ahead and save that. And if you wanted to take a look at that, again, let me just go back here to this page. You can see here I have my LinkedIn member profile as soon as this loads. And then I have my LinkedIn account profile. So that's looking at that account form. And then I have my LinkedIn email. So this is configured exactly the same way as this guy. The only thing that it does is that it has everything. You can see here, that's the last name field, right? Same one. But if I click on that, it has everything set to no, right? So it's only showing us those emails. So that's kind of how that's configured. So let's take a look at what exactly it does, right? So when I just clicked on this, you can see here that right now I have here my LinkedIn profile, my account profile, and my messages. So from here, I can, as you can see here, I can say this is not the right person. We matched them, but that was wrong. And then you can just search for somebody else. And once you find the right person, you can just go ahead and click match. So I can go back here. I can search for him, title, past companies. I can hit search. He's the only one that comes up, and then I can match that. But again, we already know that the system does some of that automatically as well, right? Based on those fields that we mentioned earlier. Icebreakers is what do I, as a user, as a logged in user, what do I have in common with them, and what can I talk to them about as an icebreaker? Well, guess what? We have 5 connections that we have in common. We both worked at RSM, and we are in 3 mutual groups. So that's kind of what Icebreakers is, really giving you the opportunity to talk to these guys because you have certain things in common, obviously. And then if I click on more, you can also ask for an introduction. And again, this really shows us, again, all of these guys that you are connected to, but that is Angel is also connected to them. So what I can do now is I can very quickly ask for an introduction. So I can just go ahead and click on Rachel's, and then I can start, I can just click here, ask for introduction, and that will load that message window. And now I can just go ahead and ask if Rachel could please introduce me to Angel. So I think this is a really big deal, because a lot of times you don't know who knows who, right, at what organization. So this is why I think this is one of the biggest strengths that LinkedIn Sales Navigator has, right? Again, being able to use your relationship, again, allowing to use your network to get introduced and get that communication through to that particular person is obviously worth a lot. If you kind of take a look at some of the data that's out there, if you're doing just a cold email or a cold call to somebody that you've never met before versus allowing somebody that you both know to kind of do that introduction, could be very, very valuable, obviously. So let's go back here and see what else we have. And then we also have related leads. And this is really anybody related to Angel that could also be a lead that you might want to interact with. That's basically what this means right over here. And it says here we couldn't find anybody that matches your sales preferences. And then obviously your sales preferences is something that you set up in LinkedIn, and then it's going to take a look at that and then it's going to give you some suggestions. So that's that LinkedIn member profile. Now let's take a look at the LinkedIn account profile. And what that does is, again, it just looks at whatever we have populated here in this account record. Now I've just changed it because I wanted to get that notification to say, hey, this guy is no longer with this particular company. So that's why you see that this is not matched right now. But I can do the same thing here. I can say this is not the right account. I need to unmatch it from RSM and then I need to rematch it. But again, I kind of wanted you guys to see what it looks like if the system shows, hey, this person is not at that company. This is that flag that I was just talking about, that not a company flag. So I'll show you that in a second, what that looks like. So here, again, very similar. We're going to be able to see all of our connections as the logged in user, right? So I can see all of my first degree connections, my team link connections, right? That's, again, my team members. I have access to their connections as well. And then my second degree connections as well. And then there is some, again, recommended leads that we saw earlier. And if there's any news out there, again, so you can kind of use that in that conversation with them, like, hey, so I heard that RSM, their national partners in healthcare, is kind of expanding right now in Vegas, and kind of very quickly get that conversation started with them. And then this is allowing us to interact with Sales Navigator, such as being able to send messages, right? In-mail messages and regular messages. And the way it works is that I'm just going to say, hey, how are you doing? I hope all is well. And if I scroll down a little bit, this is where, if I wanted to be copying this message back to Dynamics 365, I can do that from here. So I'm just going to go ahead and send that. That's now sending that through LinkedIn. And then if I go back here to my timeline, I'm just going to refresh that real quick. And here we go. Hey, how are you doing? I hope all is well. So you can see that that is really, really quick. It's like almost instant, right? So that's very nice. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you is, let me just go back here now into Sales Navigator. And I'm just going to go home here because I don't need to be, I don't need to be in the admin settings anymore because we're done with that. Let me actually do this. It's a little bit quicker. Now let's take a look in Sales Navigator. What you can do here is obviously very similar to what we just saw in Dynamics 365. I can click on there. We can see here he's saved. Here's that CRM button that we have. When I click on that, it will open up that contact record in my Dynamics 365. But I can also modify that contact in CRM. I can add a note. And this is what we talked about earlier, right? We can configure this so that when I create a note in Sales Navigator, it's going to synchronize back to Dynamics 365. Here is another note from Sales Navigator. Now, this is confusing maybe a little bit for some people. I got some questions on this. They said, is this in Dynamics? Make this note private or public? No, that's in Sales Navigator, and that has to do with people in your team and regarding sharing that or not. So that's not, this has nothing to do with CE, right? This is just copying this to CRM. I'm going to say done. It's saving it. Let's go back here. Let's take a look how quick that was. Should be pretty quick. And here we go. That's how quick that is. So it's pretty immediate. Like I said, most of the syncing is about 24 hours. This is pretty quick. Then I wanted to show you guys something else. All filters. If I click on here, I'm going to go to lead filters. We said earlier that, right, some of these lead records are going to be synchronized back to Sales Navigator. Well, which ones? I have so many. Guess what? You can go here into your filters, right? I'm going to do this again. All filters, lead filters. You can do this with accounts probably as well. And then I'm going to say show only leads in CRM. And I'm going to go search. And these are my leads that I have in CRM, in my CRM system. So that's how you can do that very, very quickly. So let's again now go back here to Angel, and Angel, spell his name probably. But what I wanted to show you as well is basically when you are creating, let me just go back here to my, oops. Let me just go back here. Castellar, my demo account. Here he is. So I kind of wanted to show you, right, that we can obviously also message from within here, but this is where we can now start creating those smart links, and then we can send those. So maybe seconds, quote, we can send these to our customers and our prospects. Let's see if I have something that's really flow color. It's really tiny. It's uploading that content right now. And then I can just go ahead and insert that link directly here within that message. What happens then is that as soon as I get a view, seeing that he's actually reviewing that data, as you can see here, you're going to be able to get that directly, that email message. And on top of that, it's not liking that. On top of that, you're actually also going to be able to see that he actually, that's this particular guy, that he actually viewed that particular smart link in, there we go. You can see that here, point drive presentation viewed. That's what that is. Now, if I go back here into smart links, and this is more, yes, this is more dynamics or less dynamics, and this is more LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but I do think this is important that you can actually go back here and take a look at who was looking at this and how long were they looking at this. And one more thing I wanted to show you guys real quick is if we have a particular person, right, that left, Angel actually belongs to this Datum Corporation, so I wanted to show you guys this. I'm going to click on my open org chart. So besides obviously the views that I talked about that were added to the system automatically, this is of course very pretty, right? Look at that. That big red dot allows me to see that I need to take a look at his record because there's something wrong. And then if I double click on that, you can see here that now Dynamics 365 wants me to verify that this contact is still with this org. And then what I can do here is I can update that contact by selecting a different account and then just saving that data. So lastly, I really wanted to also kind of show you a little bit about the prices and the licensing. I am not a licensing expert, but I kind of wanted to share this with you guys so you kind of have a little bit of an idea of what is currently available. If you want to purchase the Microsoft Relationship Sales Solutions, you have to keep in mind that your organization needs to have a Microsoft Enterprise Agreement in order to purchase that. And also keep in mind that for the enterprise licenses, there is a 10-seat minimum. So you can't just go ahead and say, oh, I just want one. You have to make sure that you do a minimum of those 10 seats. Now, the next question is probably going to be, well, what if I don't have that Microsoft Enterprise Agreements? Can I still take advantage of that? Absolutely. You're going to be able to just purchase LinkedIn separately as well. And this is really that standalone, right? And you can kind of see, I also put the link on there as well, the business.linkedin.com sales-solutions compare plans, where you can kind of take a look. You can kind of take a look at that, and enterprise doesn't have a price on there, but that's $1,600 annually per user. And again, right, enterprise, so we're going to have that 10-seat minimum for enterprise. And the professional and the teams do not have that 10-seat minimum. So keep in mind, keep that in mind as well. And this is, again, kind of showing you all of those features, right? So professional has 20 email messages per month, so many saved leads. And again, the 1,500 saved leads is in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, right? So this is kind of showing you all of the differences between all those different plans that we have. And again, take a look at business.linkedin.com/sales-solutions, where you can kind of compare some of those plans with each other as well. If you want more information, again, I wrote 3 articles on this topic. I did some videos on it as well. Be sure to check out my website, d365goddess.com. There's a lot of information out there. Feel free to connect with me or email me. All of my information is visible here. And I wanted to stop here for a second. I have 3 minutes left, but I wanted to see if there were any questions from anybody. Is the information synced in real time? So it is once a day, depending on what you're looking at. So you saw earlier that all of those activities that I talked about earlier, that's pretty direct, right? When somebody views one of those smart links, that's really direct. When I'm creating a new note, that's really direct, right? When I'm creating any of those activities, that's really immediately. But some of that other synchronization where it's matching the records together and that type of stuff, right? The pictures of the contacts and the not a company flag, that's the 24-hour sync for that. So good question. And I think that was all the questions I had. So thank you guys so much for staying here with me on this call, and I hope everybody has a great day.